When life gets unpredictable, preparation matters. In medicine, it's all about staying alert, ready for whatever comes through the door. On the road, it's no different. That's why Volvo designs vehicles to help anticipate risk, reduce harm, and protect lives. The Volvo XC90's advanced safety systems inspire confident decisions wherever the road takes you. The Volvo XC90, for life. Proud sponsor of the Pit Podcast. Learn more at volvocars.ca/safety.
The Quebec Rental Board, the TAL, has approved a maximum rent increase of 5.9% for 2025. It is the highest increase rate in 30 years. At 514-790-0800, is this outrageous or is it about time? Maybe you are a landlord who has been struggling and say, hey, we need a bigger increase. We're going to find out what you think, but I also want to get some thoughts from some housing advocates. Arnold Bennett is once again with us. He's on the line. Hi, Arnold Bennett. Hi, Arnold.
Yeah, good morning.
Arnold, the number comes out. What was your reaction?
It's horrendous. And by the way, that's not a maximum increase. That's a minimum increase.
Minimum increase. Okay. Yeah.
But for buildings where people pay their own heating.
Okay.
If they don't pay their own heating, strangely enough, the increase is lower. This is the basic increase before taxes, insurance, and major repairs. Okay? So if the landlord pays the electricity, it's not minimum 5.9, it's minimum 5.5. If it's gas heating, it's minimum 5.0. And if it's oil heating, it's minimum 4.1.
Yeah.
Go figure. So, okay?
Yeah.
The only improvement is that the increase for major repairs, instead of $4 a thousand, it's slightly lower than it was last year. But to give you an idea, the reason for this is because they're allowing indexing of the landlord's profit, what they call net revenue. That used to be, for many, many years, around 1.4%. Now it's 6.9%. Okay, which is, and last year it was 4%, to give you the idea. So last year, a lot of people got 4%.
Yeah. Unless
they were lucky, enough where costs went down, such as oil or gas. Previous year, it was the oil and gas that went sky high. So it's been all over the map.
Arnold, let me just ask you: who makes up the TAL, the Quebec Rental Board? Who's on it?
It's in the Quebec. It's not even the rental board that makes this up.
Okay.
These rates are decided in cabinet by the ministry based on economic indicators, which this time around are somewhat obscure on their logic, because one of the factors that is taken into account here is inflation, right?
Yeah.
Well, according to their own statistics, inflation is lower this year.
Inflation lower.
The previous year.
Arnold, what do you say to someone, you're a landlord who owns a triplex or a fiveplex, sixplex, and they're looking at their mortgage payments and it's going to be up for renewal and their costs are going to soar, and they're looking at this and they're saying, thank the Lord, because they may have struggled and they're trying to play catch up from the last few years. What do you say to people with that position, that this was necessary?
What do you say to the millions of people who are struggling to be able to afford their housing, where it's not just a poor people's problem anymore. It's way up into the middle class, where these increases, 3 years in a row now, are knocking people for a loop. Their incomes aren't going up like that.
Yeah.
And by the way, the Bank of Canada has lowered the mortgage rates. The prime rate over the last few years. So, index, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, cover cost, yeah. But this kind of huge jump in 1 year, the problem we have in this country, contrary to what some of the politicians are saying, isn't a shortage of housing. It's a shortage of affordable housing.
Yeah.
And it's always been like that, but now it's worse.
Arnold, listen, thanks for hopping on with us this morning. Do appreciate your time.
Okay, bye-bye.
That's Arnold Bennett, housing advocate. I want to bring Amy Darwish into the discussion. Community organizer at the Parc-Extension Committee. Amy, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
What does this mean for you and the people you help in Parc-Extension?
I think it's going to be a very, very stressful time for tenants over the coming weeks. Already, people this increase is coming at a time when people were already struggling to make ends meet and don't necessarily have the capacity to pay an additional $60 a month in rent. And it's also, as Arnold mentioned, the amount that was put forward by the TAL is actually just a minimum and also just a suggestion. Landlords are absolutely under no obligation to use those figures. And what we often see is that landlords benefit from a context where rents are high to push for even more. And in a context where we have a housing crisis and a shortage of affordable housing and there's very little on the rental market, a lot of tenants hesitate to defend their increases, to contest their increases. This is part of the reason why we've been demanding a rent freeze and measures to protect tenants.
Amy, what should people be doing here if they're going to get that renewal notice and the landlord will be asking for 6 or 8 or 10% increases? What's your message to people this morning?
First of all, that tenants always have the right to refuse a rent increase and to stay in their apartments. Landlords will often will not present it that way. It'll be like, you can either accept this or you can leave. That's not at all the case. Tenants have the right to refuse, and they also have time to respond. We encourage people to take the time to estimate their increase. As I mentioned, landlords often try to ask for a little bit more than they should. We also encourage people to talk to their neighbors, to organize together as a building. There is strength in numbers.
Okay, Amy, any last, I want to get to our phone lines. You want to stick around, actually, see if I can bounce something off you after I hear from some listeners? Okay, Amy, stick around here. Let me go to Henry in NDG. Henry?
Yes, good morning.
Yes.
Good morning. Yeah. No, it doesn't make any sense because even in Ontario for the last 2 years, maybe 3 years, they've been locked in at 2.5% for their rent increase.
Uh-huh.
And again, the rent increase is not obligatory. Mm-hmm. I have a building next door to me that I've been here for 35 years now, being kicked out. They haven't had a rent increase for 19 years.
Yeah.
And the owner says he's just ecstatic with the fact that the value of his building is exploding, and he has good tenants. They pay on time. So why bother? Or why cause so much trouble? My landlord here, I'm paying. Well, it ends with a 1. And every month I go, are you sure? Because it makes it more complicated, the 1. Sometimes I pay cash. And he says, oh, no, it's the law. It's the law. I need the $1. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Henry, thanks for the call. And I wonder about, because there are landlords, does exist. There are landlords that are, no, it's fine, and they don't increase very much. You wonder how many of those landlords, they own the property, there isn't a mortgage payment coming up, and I wonder if that's part of the equation. Let me scooch over to Mark in the Eastern Townships. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Elias. Yeah, I'm that landlord you're talking about. Good morning.
Tell me more.
I have an apartment block that I bought 5 years ago, and it was pretty good so far. But with the new increases in interest rates, it's really, really hard to make it meet. Used to make a profit from my apartments. But now, with everything, I'm breaking even. So if the roof goes, which is about $40,000, I can't replace the roof unless I take another mortgage.
Mark,
so I just wanted to say that landlords are being attacked, but what about electricians, plumbers, and contractors? How come they don't have a wage rate?
Man, you try and call a plumber, huh? I think anyone who's had to call a plumber in the last couple of years.
And if you wanted to fix the problem, have a fixed mortgage rate for people who own apartment buildings.
Yeah.
So I'm that guy that everybody doesn't like right now because of the rates that I'm going to have to increase it by. But I'm telling you, I'm barely scraping by.
Mark, what do you say to someone who says, okay, I get it, you're scraping by, but your value of your property is shot up, and when you sell, you're going to make a killing? What do you say to that?
Yeah, when I sell it. But right now, I still got to fix your windows, fix your doors, change your roof.
Yeah.
How come I can't say to the electrician, hey, that's way too much?
Yeah.
But they can fix our rents to be a certain amount, but I can't increase more than 5.9. I admit that is pretty high. But like I said, this will cover me for my mortgage payment.
What would have been reasonable? Like you said 5.9 is high. What was the number in your mind that you would have been reasonable this year?
I'd have been happy with 4.
4, huh? Okay, Mark, listen, great insight, great call. I appreciate that. Thanks so much for calling.
No problem, anytime.
Let me head back over to Amy, actually. So, Amy, you just heard from a landlord, and, he makes the case that he's basically at break even. Anything breaks, he's going to be in trouble. What do you say to that? And I wonder, in Parc-Extension, you must know maybe triplex owners, duplex owners who are renting out and might be in the same predicament with the increase in interest rates. What do you say to that aspect, Amy?
From what I understand, and as Arnold mentioned, the mortgage rate actually went down a little bit this year. Mm-hmm. I'd also point out that the rent increase calculation allows landlords to pass off the expenses that they incur for renovations onto tenants. Another part of how the increases get calculated is an indicator that's called the net increase in revenue, which is calculated as a function of rent increases. So what that means is if rent increases were high the year before, they're going to be even higher next year. Uh-huh. So basically what this is doing is it's causing this vicious circle.
Snowball effect.
It's creating a context for runaway rent inflation.
It's a snowball effect, right? Because exactly. You piggyback on that. Okay, let me head over now to Malcolm. He's on the line. Malcolm says here you're on a pension. What does this mean for you, this increase?
Good morning, Elias.
Morning.
I have a statement and I have a question for you when Amy is still there.
Yeah.
I'm on a fixed pension, okay, and it's calculated by years' work. The government's federal and provincial has to kick up on the pension. The other thing is that what is the difference between affordable, social, and low-income housing and rent? What is there really a difference?
Malcolm, that's a great question. Amy, you're still there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Could you answer that one?
I agree. Sorry?
Yeah, go ahead. Answer the questions. Yeah, thank you.
So first of all, I agree with Malcolm. Part of the problem here is that social assistance, pension funds, and wages have not kept up at all with these increases, which creates even more precariousness for tenants. To answer the question about the differences in the types of housing. So basically, social or low-income housing is calculated as a percentage of people's income. So, for example, if you get a unit in an HLM, for example, it's calculated as 25% of your income. So basically what that does is it allows even tenants who are living on low income to have access to, dignified living conditions and to have rent that they can actually afford and be able to afford their other expenses. The problem with affordable housing is that it's actually not affordable for the vast majority of tenants. It's calculated as a percentage of the market rate, and when rents are very, very high, it ends up not being accessible for the vast majority of people who need it.
All right, Malcolm, I hope that answers some of your questions there, and thank you
very much.
Thank you for calling and some great insight on the social assistance programs, whether it's pensions or other types of assistance that have not kept up to that 5.9% level. Let me scooch over to Tony in Rosemount. Hi, Tony.
Good morning, Elias.
Morning.
Okay. Excuse me. We're talking about rent freeze, but then the taxes, property taxes, they're not frozen. School taxes are not frozen. Insurance is not frozen. With regards to renovations, well, if I do renovations, the rental board formula allows me to increase a certain amount for that. As an example, if I replace a water heater, and every 10 years I have to replace one based on insurance, it takes me 30 years to collect this money back, interest-free. All right? Now, if also the thing about putting up buildings for low-cost housing. Why does the government subsidize some of the rents to keep the renters where they are, rather than putting up these buildings and they have to maintain it?
Yeah.
And also the percentage of rental increase is discriminatory in the sense that, for example, if you're paying $1,000 and you have a 6% increase, you pay $60, but the person paying $500. She only gets a $30 increase.
Yeah.
So the rent increase should be distributed evenly amongst all renters.
Really? I don't know, Tony, because that would mean the lower you rent you have, the bigger the hit is proportionally. I don't know.
No, it's not. Well, proportionately, yes. But if you replace the roof, like the other gentleman said, everybody's going to have an equal share of the cost of the roof. Not that you're going to be paying $100 extra a month and the other guy's going to be paying $50 extra a month. It's the same rules.
Tony, listen, thanks for the call and comments. I think we got something out of you there. Amy, just a thought on what Tony said about trying to recoup costs of repairs. Says it's difficult. Is he on to anything there?
What I would say is, once again, that landlords are able to get costs recouped through the rent increase calculation. I'd also point out that many landlords actually ask for far more than what's covered than what is suggested by the TAL. For example, last year rents across Quebec went up on average by about 8.7%. Despite that. It seems like actually landlords are raking in a lot of profits, often at the expense of tenants.
Amy?
Yes.
I just want to ask, because you're in Parc-Extension, and I'm running up against the clock, I do want to ask you what you're seeing in Parc-Ex. And I wonder, Parc-Ex is known from the 60s when my parents arrived to today as an immigrant community, right? A place where people who've just come to Quebec and Montreal often end up. Is there anything to say on the immigration side of things that there's not enough housing available for the number of immigrants that we have? Do you have any perspective from Parc-Extension on that?
I would say, first of all, that it's really a myth to say that the housing crisis was caused by the arrival of immigrants.
Nobody's saying that, Amy. I just want to say, I don't think I've heard anyone say that. They're talking about the number. Nobody says immigrants cause housing increases. It's like when you have an extraordinary number, it could influence things. I think it's all about the number, not immigrants in general.
I think the things that make me doubt that is, first of all, that the rent started to skyrocket during the pandemic when actually the border was closed to most immigrants. Some of the highest increases we've also seen have been in regions Quebec that actually accommodate very, very few immigrants. I think the problem is actually that the government has refused to rein in the rental market, and most of all has refused to build new social housing. If the government invested properly in social housing, was building enough of these units that people could actually afford, I don't think we would be in this situation.
Amy, food for thought and some great points there. I want to thank you so much for hopping on this morning.
Thank you so much.